now, for more details about the situation in China, our correspondent Patrick Falk is joining us live from Beijing. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. So tell us, we hear that there are no new deaths linked to the virus now in China. How true is this? And how much can we rely on the data coming from China?
Well, there are certainly lots of people that have raised questions about the veracity of some of the data, particularly in the last couple of weeks. And notably, it has been pointed out that state media didn't make an awful lot of fanfare over what is really quite a big development. No deaths since they started reporting them in January. But as I say, not an awful lot said about that in state media. So that seems to suggest that there is an acknowledgement that there is perhaps a bit of a flaw in the way that the data is being calculated and the methodologies that have been used. I mean, for one, you noted just a moment ago about those 32 new imported cases. What you didn't include is the 30 asymptomatic cases. Those aren't being included in the overall count of infections. That's being kept as a separate tally. So, you know, there are, as I say, question marks about the way that all this is being calculated and the data that is coming out of China. But at the same time, though, it's been suggested that, you know, what we can't deny is that this is an improvement, and the trend is certainly heading in the sort of direction that we want it to be at this point.
Right, Patrick, now you yourself just mentioned the asymptomatic patients which are sort of missing from this tally, and, you know, the questions of methodology and the counting in China has always been questioned. So tell us, are measures still being taken in China to make sure that the infection doesn't spread, or does it seem like life is slowly returning back to normal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a bit of sort of mixed situation, because authorities have been saying, particularly in Hubei province and Wuhan city, that life will get back to normal soon. But you can sense that there is a huge amount of uncertainty about that, not just because of the imported cases and the asymptomatic cases. Last week, we were reporting that in Central County, county had to be put under lockdown because of a small breakout of infections there. So that's a sign that we just don't know if this might still blow out again, if you like. And interestingly, importantly, I should say, the restrictions, the lockdown on Wuhan are going to be lifted tomorrow. And of course, that's another big step for the country, the epicenter of the virus, as we know, having these harsh restrictions removed for the first time since the city was locked down since January 23rd.
Right. Now, Patrick, you're, of course, in Beijing, which is a big commercial center. Tell us about the situation there. Is life turning back to normal? Are businesses opening up? Are people walking about the streets without much restrictions? What is the situation like on ground?
I would say that people are still remaining really quite vigilant here. You don't see an awful lot of people going without masks around the city unless they are in open spaces. You mentioned the parks over the weekend. It has been fantastic weather here for the past few days, so people haven't been able to resist to go out. And as you can imagine, if you've been stuck at home for the past couple of months with a bit of fresh air outside and sunshine, people have been really eager to go out and try and enjoy that. And they have been very careful in the parks. There are a lot of security guards and a lot of volunteers reminding people to keep their distance from one another, and also to wear the minimum being the masks, essentially. And so, you know, it certainly seems that the situation is fairly under control. But, you know, I think there is a lot of anxiety among people knowing that there are these issues around imported cases and asymptomatic cases. So people are generally still being quite careful. And businesses also, I mean, a lot of them are open at this point, but, you know, there's not a lot of people going into shops and so on and so forth at this point.
Right, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us and for all your inputs. And now let's move on to our next...